May the force be with you this weekend. As we look across the Premier League games, there's lots of teams out there looking to bring balance to the force for themselves, with lots of things happening this season on and off the pitch. I think almost every team in the league this year has somewhat of a reason to be aggrieved about some sort of external factor. And the Premier League this weekend starts off on Friday night with probably the prime candidates for this one, Everton, who have turned into one of the most informed teams in the Premier League. They've kind of detached themselves now from the relegation scrap, despite all the points deductions that they've had. And, if they did have their full allotment of points, Everton could be in a pretty tidy position in the table right now. So they come into a Friday night game here away to Luton, who are still in the mire, still in that relegation zone, looking to claw themselves out into safety, try and get that storybook ending to the Premier League season and try and go again for season 2. Now, as I look into this game, it's not one, I'm actually kind of surprised it's a Friday night game, because it's not one that has goals written all over it. Now, Everton are in great form at the moment, but high scoring matches for them away from home and for Luton at home. This doesn't look like it's going to be, goals galore all over the place. If this was Saturday 3 o'clock, I'd be saying this is 0-0, 1-1 all day. But with it being Friday night under the lights, some magic could happen in this one. And Everton, they are still in the bottom half of the table, and who knows how many points they will actually finish with. So no, every point is a prisoner for them, don't get me wrong. But Luton, you've got to think this is one of the nights, this is one of the fixtures where they overperform or where they get one of their best nights of the season. So I think Luton are a really good shout to win this game tonight, or maybe by the time you're watching this, last night. I think 2 goals is on the cards here for Luton, and the way Everton have been playing, there's no way they're probably not going to get a goal in this one. So I'm going to go with 2-1, but this one could be crazy. Say Friday night under the lights, it could be something mad like 3-2 or 4-4 or something crazy, but I think it will probably end up being 2-1 to Luton. It's 3 games to go. They're 1 point ahead. Arsenal surely have almost got one hand on the Premier League trophy after beating Tottenham last weekend in the North London derby, but it is still back, focused on the job, the task at hand for Arsenal, one fixture at a time, as they welcome Andoni Iraola's informed Bournemouth to the Emirates this weekend, in a game that, is the next chapter of that kind of Basque managerial influence that's happening across the Premier League with Unai Emery also as well. So I do think that this is not going to be a foregone conclusion for Arsenal. Bournemouth will be coming here with a game plan, with a strategy, and are starting to begin and hit a little bit of form now, kind of peak performances for the season, which is probably the worst time for Arsenal to be playing them. This time last year, you might remember, it was a similar fixture in a similar situation, and it needed a 97th minute goal from Reece Nelson to win the day in the end. And I think this is exactly the sort of match that's probably going to unfold before us again. It's going to be goals at both ends. Both teams are going to look to try and, actually win the game themselves. And Arsenal, although they do have a very good defensive record, especially at home, when you look at the record, the last team that came and scored a couple of goals was Unai Emery's Aston Villa. And I think Bournemouth, will have a bit of that secret sauce that's needed to get in behind the Arsenal defence in this one. Bournemouth have conceding 60 goals in 35 games already so far this year. I don't think there's any way that they can resist Arsenal with the form that they're in at the moment. And kind of similar to the North London derby, where I thought Tottenham would have maybe gave them more of a match, I think Arsenal just have the quality to win matches, even when they are, helter-skelter, end-to-end, getting a bit hairy. I think they've just got the quality. They've got a little bit of that experience from last year, and, they've got that tempo really kicking on. So I think this is going to be a repeat of the North London derby. I think this is going to be a 3-2 win to Arsenal. Looking at the head-to-heads between these two, every time Brentford and Fulham play each other, it looks to be goals galore, over 2.5 goals for both of these teams. And it's a funny situation for both of them, because like we've said before doing these predictions, neither one of them is really, making something of their season. With Brentford, there's maybe a little bit of damage limitation and just making sure that, they are totally safe now, Fulham, can they break into the top 10? It's a bit of a stretch, but for the last 3 games, I'm sure they're going to give it a go. So it's one of those ones where I think the pressure will be off both teams, and both of these teams really have, maybe less so Fulham, but Brentford, it's maybe at home, they could do by having a positive performance, really putting a memorable scoreline out there. So I think Brentford will be out to score a good couple of goals in this one, and Fulham, like I said, they're always going to be turning up and attacking, and with the form some of their players are in, this won't be dull. I'm quite tempted to take the draw on this one at 2 each, but I don't know. I think this is maybe a 3 points for Brentford somehow, so I'm probably going to edge this towards 2-1 to Brentford. And down at the bottom of the table, what probably is the biggest must-win game of the weekend, Nottingham Forest are going away to resign dead and buried Sheffield United, and their attempts to keep ahead of Luton. This game is going to be really interesting because Forrest will know the Luton result coming into it, and if Luton did get a good result against Everton, it really puts the pressure on Forrest to go and get the points and get back ahead of Luton, as it were. So this is going to be a huge fixture for Forrest, and they've been on a really bad run, had a really tough run as well in terms of the actual opponents that they've had, and I'm sure they've had this date marked in the calendar as on that day, guys, we need the 3 points. And I think they'll be coming into this one fully focused on the task at hand. But a big fan of Morgan Gibbs-White and one or two other Forest players. And I think this is a game that they'll relish. And if they can break the dam, I think Forest could score a famous amount of goals here, maybe 3 or 4. But yeah, I'm probably going to stick with 3. Sheffield United aren't really failing to score. It's just they actually just concede tons is really the problem. So I think at home again, they're going to be putting themselves, they're going to put a good account of themselves man for man on the pitch. They'll take the opportunities that come their way. I'm not too sure how much pressure they'll be able to put Forrest in, because Forrest really will have the bit between the teeth for this one. You would think this is absolute must win. I can't say that enough. So yeah, I'm probably going to take Nottingham Forest to win this, ultimately 3-1. Now Burnley have only lost 1 game in the last 5, and this is probably one of the better spells they've had this season, and playing host to a Newcastle United that's been ravaged with injuries and problems all season. They might think, do you know what, this is maybe a game we can get something out of, and they would be very, very wrong to think that way, because Newcastle United just want some space to play into. They want to counter-attack, rip teams apart in transition, and be clinical as they are with the main players in their team, which we do expect to play. So I think Newcastle would be more worried about coming into a game like this against like 2 really deep banks of players and that kind of thing, which it hasn't even slowed them down too much. But I think with the fact that Burnley are in real dire straits at the moment, we've been speaking already about some of the other candidates in the relegation fight down here. Burnley are only 1 point off of Luton, 2 points off of Forest. They still see themselves in the mix here. At home, they will have to come out, and they're playing the company style of football. They've not been changing that. They are attacking and going forward with fullbacks and all that stuff. And really that just plays so far into Newcastle's hands. I just don't think you're going to be able to stop them in this one. It's going to be a really busy day for the keeper. No two ways about it. Big Muric or Trafford, whoever's going to get the nod, ultimately is going to have their hands full. But Isak and Gordon, for me, have become one of the best attacking partnerships in European football. And the form we've seen from Bruno Guimaraes over the last 2 or 3 weeks, especially since Elliot Anderson's come back into the midfield alongside him, has been very notable. So I think Newcastle are going to win this, no problem at all. Newcastle do like to score 2 or 3 goals once they get going, and I think this will be the sort of day that they get it. Will they get a clean sheet against Burnley or not is a really difficult one for me, because although Burnley's form has been good, their last 5 home games have only actually scored 4 goals, so I'm not too sure for how attacking and threatening they are. If they'll be able to get a goal here against Newcastle, because the Newcastle defence is very good. I suppose the goalkeeper's maybe a bit more sus, so yeah, let's say they get a goal in this one. It's going to be 3-1 to Newcastle. Man City in the last 5 games have scored 19 goals and only conceding 4. It feels like they've really built up that big head of steam. The freight train is really gaining momentum as they're looking to crash through all the barriers towards the end of the season and regaining the 4th Premier League title. And I don't know how to think about it for them being at home to Wolves, because Wolves have been a lot of fun to watch this year as from a neutral point of view. They do have good, talented attacking players and a coach that likes to push the envelope and really try and go out and try and win the game, spoil the party as it were. And they've had some modest success with it over the year. They're probably the most screwed club in the league this year for VAR decisions, refereeing, interference and all that other caper. But Man City don't exactly get their public enemy number 1 for a lot of things, aren't they, really? Just to call a spade, So I'm not too sure. The lesser of 2 evils, maybe in the VAR room, maybe something funny will happen in this one. Let's wait and see. But, Wolves, although backs to the wall defending and counter-attack is kind of the name of the game for them, against a Man City or even against any other team in the league, really. So they know what they're getting when they come into this game. Man City, I think, just with the form that's getting hit now, they're going to score an obscene amount of goals. I'm going to say 5 in this one. And with the whole goalkeeper dynamic and with just how Wolves play, I wouldn't be surprised if Wolves did get 2 in this one. Maybe in a great day for Wolves, because it is a Saturday night fixture. Don't really know how strong the team will be with, Wolves. They have had an injury crisis of their own, I suppose, as well. But I'm going to stick with 5-1, because a Man City player is probably going to get a hat-trick, and then 1 or 2 others are going to contribute, So, yeah, that's kind of how I feel. 5-1. The Villa will be looking to bounce back after being bloodied up on Thursday night at home to Olympiacos, 4-2. They're going away to the south coast to play Brighton, and a team themselves who are going from pillar to post, getting knocked out all over the place. And both of these teams are really, really, really needing a win in more ways than one. Brighton in the moment at 12 will definitely still have eyes on getting into the top 10. Obviously, the extra financial incentives that come with that, as well as the prestige and the credibility of building on season and season, hitting milestones, etc., compounding in success to some extent. And Villa, of course, who, with Tottenham losing again, maybe they're just about safe in that top 4, but it's not over until it's over. So Aston Villa really need to be looking at this with as much severity as they do the semi-final second leg in Athens next week. Brighton in the last 5 games have scored 1 goal and conceded 11. There's not much hope there. It's really bizarre the form they've found themselves in since De Zerbi's so highly linked to the Liverpool job all of a sudden. But at home, they fared a little bit better. 6 goals in the last 5 games with 9 conceded. But Aston Villa away, third best team in the league in the last 5 games, scoring 9, conceding 8, but winning 3 in the process, drawing 1. So the problem with Villa is just how thin the squad is now. You know, we've seen Douglas Luiz and John McGinn again playing a big part on Thursday night. There's no Camara, Tielemans, Zaniolo, Ramsey. You know, they've been missing a lot of really key players for a lot of, in that engine room that does so much. So I'm not actually too sure how this game is actually going to go. I think Brighton could overperform, you know, their form. They've been off all week, you know, and they've been chilling, really ready to bounce back. And they'll see Villa, you know, they'll watch them on Thursday night. They'll see where the legs are. And Brighton can be clever enough and smart enough, I think, to exploit Villa, especially with the goalkeeper situation being a little bit different there as well. And it's just going to put a lot more pressure on Villa this weekend, I think. Now, Villa have been in a great habit of scoring like 3 goals in the league. Obviously, they get 2 on Thursday, which is, you know, in that same kind of realm. So I don't think Villa are going to get wildly outscored by Brighton. It is going to be a tight one. Could Villa rescue this to being like a high-scoring draw, something like 3 each? I think they could, but Brighton at home have conceded 9 in the last 5, and I definitely think Villa are above average in that regard. So, yeah, I'm going to go 3 each. Maybe Villa win at 3-2, but I'm going to go 3 each. Now, West Ham made a right nuisance of themselves against Liverpool last week, definitely spoiling the party. And Chelsea beating Tottenham, again, went totally against the script. I thought Tottenham would have had a much better time of it. Chelsea coming out quite convincing winners on the scoreline, certainly. And both these teams now are kind of fighting for the same thing in the table. Chelsea 2 points ahead of West Ham with a game in hand, and they're kind of looking to try and catch up with the likes of Newcastle, Man United, and try and put pressure on Tottenham in the final running of the season, because all of these clubs actually have 4 games to play before this weekend, whereas West Ham and, you know, a few of the other ones, maybe even ahead of them, Aston Villa, etc., have played 35. So there's definitely some more football to be done in this section here. And I think a lot can happen very quickly in this section of the table, especially when Chelsea are playing at home at West Ham this weekend. Now, Chelsea, I'm not normally that optimistic about their outlook, but their home form is very credible, scoring a lot of goals quite consistently now, by hook or by crook, and, you know, however they're managing to do it, they are doing it. And West Ham, having conceded 5 against Palace and 2 against Liverpool, like, their defence is not resolute, it's not rock solid, and the way they want to attack as well kind of plays into that, because similar to Chelsea, like, they want to run into space quickly, use 2 passes, play a channel for a wide creative player, and then try and get the tap in on the cross. So getting similar vibes to Liverpool last week. I can't remember exactly what I predicted for Liverpool West Ham as I look at this now, but I think this could be a repeat. I think it could be 2-2. And it's the big game of the weekend. It feels like it's the derby of the 2 managers that have fallen from grace the most over the last couple of months. You know, Jurgen Klopp and Ange Postecoglou have been absolute favourites this year for, you know, great takes on the game, as well as like funny interactions with journalists and post-match and all the rest of it. But it's easy to do that when you're winning and when you're climbing the table. But as you're looking at set achievements and they're maybe just slipping from between your fingers right at the end, it's not as a happy time to be a Premier League manager, as it were. And these two this weekend go head to head, with both of them needing to rebound quickly and get 3 points on the boards to kind of get the last little push over the line. For Tottenham, it's trying to get into that top 4 space now, qualify for Champions League, finish as high on the table as possible. And for Liverpool, really, like, I don't think they're in it at all. I think they're out now, you know, but all they can do is win their games, and you just never, ever, ever know the way this is shaking out. They've dropped points, they've made it way harder for themselves, but they won't be giving up the ghost, especially at home. But again, similar to West Ham last week, the way Tottenham play isn't really good for Liverpool's defence. The way Liverpool play isn't really good for Tottenham's defence as well. I think for this game, for the stakes involved, the managers involved, the style of plays, we've seen Ange Postecoglou again on the touchline, like he did at Celtic, shouting at his teams, telling them, stop fucking passing it back. We're going that way. We're trying to score into the goal. And that will be firmly the mantra that Tottenham turn up with in this game here. I think it's going to be goals galore at both sides of this. I think it's going to be a very, very good afternoon. I don't know if I could quite pick a winner here. I think if I'm going to say, I think that I'm just kind of remembering how weak the Tottenham defence is at the moment. Yeah, I'm going to take Liverpool to win this. I'm going to tone down my expectations, because that's normally my problem. I normally kind of get it just about there, but I add one or too many goals onto it. So I'm going to go for Liverpool to win 3-2. And on Monday night, it is the battle of the wild cards. Crystal Palace are at home to Man United in a game that will not fail to disappoint. Ole Glasner's Palace have been a breath of fresh air over the last month or so as they get set to really implement his style of play, his tactics, his strategy into next season by, you know, really shaping up for it now. And I think the Palace fans can already see, you know, how different it is and where it's going to be successful for them. And they're playing Erik ten Hag's Man United, who's been there for like too long and got nowhere near this style of fluidity with vast more resources available to him. And this feels like a game on Monday night where it's just going to be microscope Man United, and it's going to be about the clangers, the recruitment, this and that. And we spoke about Palace being a wild card. They beat Newcastle 2-0 at home. They beat West Ham 5-2 at home. And Man City did win 4-2, but, you know, Palace went for it in a big, big way. And again, like I've said before, Palace are the wild card for now, between now and the end of the season. And I really do think that front three of Mateta, Elise and Eze are just going to run all over Man United. The boy Wharton is probably going to put about 40 million onto his transfer value in this game as well. And Man United are probably going to have egg on their face to some extent. Now, they do have talent. They will get opportunities. And the way Palace do play, like, you know, if Man United could turn the ball over back quickly against them, you know, Man United are fine with that style of play. They can maybe score a goal doing that. So I don't know if it's going to be quite as high scoring as it was against West Ham or whatever. But if you can score sort of goals Crystal Palace have been scoring stylistically, you're going to get chances against Man United. And I think it's going to be 3-1. I really want to say 5-0, but I think it's going to be 3-1.